I learned something on this flight that's going to change the way I fly going forward, and I definitely wanted to share it. So this is going to be more of an old school Flight Chops episode, identifying a problem and then debriefing it. I may have undersold this learning moment by baking it into a larger story in my previous episode, which I still think is a great one. I'm very proud of it. I put a lot of heart and soul into that one. Got great comments, 99% like ratio, awesome viewer retention, but the real-time view count fell off the cliff in the first 48 hours, and that's usually the end of the life for a video, so I didn't want this to die. So I felt the need to share this moment as its own thing. Oil pressure seemed a little low, or oil temperature, and I don't remember what it's usually at normally, but it was barely above the red, so I cut it short. On the last one, it went below the red on final, and I pulled the power back. It's ironic that the follow-up to what was definitely my most popular video of all time, which is currently approaching 4 million views, got some pretty crappy traction initially, but it is what it is. YouTube is hard. So I'm kind of embracing that failure and making some lemonade here. And I want to release this learning nugget as its own thing and hopefully get it out there. I think it's a really important message that all pilots should be able to relate to. Now, obviously, I'm flying a WarBird in this one, but this applies to anything, even if you're flying a 172. So for this one, I'm working on my proficiency in the T6. It's a challenging airplane to fly. I'll include things I didn't put in the last episode, like the run-up, and just sort of some more real-time me working on landing this thing. It's gonna be more old school, raw, pretty much uncut. This is the sort of thing that I share with Patreon supporters. You'll get to see the problem kind of happening in real time. And I challenge you to see if you would have noticed it. It's pretty subtle. And if you want to skip to the end, you can go to the following timestamp and see the debrief and the resolution, but otherwise enjoy this ride along. I'm just doing my final pass to add the voiceovers to this one, and I'm actually pretty stoked. It really is a solid debrief. Okay, so making sure there's nothing in there that can stick us out. A critical step before soloing this aircraft is to make sure the back seat is prepared. That involves stowing the passenger's stick, tightening up the seatbelts, and getting rid of any loose objects. Have a good one. And if you're not flying solo, this is obviously when you'd want to brief your passenger, because doing so after strapping in is definitely not an option. Dave, who trained me in this airplane, was flying the Steerman today. I told him part of my plan for this flight was to test out the digital checklists against the actual physical ones. When he saw this footage of me fumbling with them, he joked that it looked like an infomercial, but this is legit. I can't hold all these limes and feel confident that I'm getting through all the required checklist items in this thing. All clear! The inertial starter in this thing sounds awesome. While we're waiting for it to spool up, the two things that I found were missing on the physical checklist were turning the prop through for the first flight of the day and also prepping the back seat. Both very important items that I would never want to forget. Contact! The previous episode covers picking up my taxi clearance, but I didn't include the run-up in that one, so here it is in real time. To make tight turns in this airplane, you need to unlock the tail wheel, which you do by pushing the stick full forward, and then you can really spin this thing around. It's pretty cool. It just takes a little bit of time to get used to it. The run-up and pre-takeoff checks take about 2.5 minutes. If you want to skip straight to takeoff, jump to 6:45. Before my first training flight in this thing, I made sure I knew that you need to loosen your seatbelt in order to reach the carb heat, which is kind of awkwardly located. Here's some footage from that first one. And also the mixture in this thing is backwards. We covered that in the first training episode as well.
Maybe the logic has something to do with the fact that when you go, to your mixture, and then you're slowing down, it hooks it in and you can't mess it up.
That came up in the comments for the last one, so I want to make sure to review it here before anyone worried that I was taking off with the mixture set too lean. This airplane is loud, which is why you close the canopy for run-up. And since the knee board is front and center here, people have been asking me why I have it upside down. It's both so the charger port is facing away from me, but also because I want to be able to flip it toward myself instead of toward the controls or the panel when I take notes on the paper underneath it. A fun fact about setting the elevator and rudder trim: you're supposed to set it to 11 and 3 o'clock. I ended up getting it backwards here because I haven't been in the plane for a while, so that made the takeoff roll interesting. So I'm going to tweak the checklist to actually include specifically that the elevator goes to 11 o'clock. And also, like, you can multitask out of these checklists and go back and, if you get interrupted, not lose your spot. So I'm totally sold on these things. This is legit. It's not an infomercial. Anyways, back to the flight. Here we go. Unlocking the tail wheel one more time and getting ready to line up for takeoff.
And tower, it's Victor India Juliet holding short of 25 at India, ready to go. Don't need a backtrack for the circuit.
Victor India Juliet, Windsor Tower at India, line up runway 25 and squawk 1212 airborne.
Okay, lining up and squawking 1212, Victor India Juliet.
Victor India Juliet Tower, left-hand circuits, wind 210 at 7 from India, clear takeoff, runway 25.
Clear takeoff 25 for the left circuits on 25, Victor India Juliet. All right. Let's be friends, girl. Here we go, left crosswind. Power set.
Alpha Golf Tower, wind 210 at 8, clear to land, runway 25.
Clear to land 25.
So here I am fumbling with the trim being set wrong, but anyways, I got that fixed fairly quick. And then I was a little bit late raising the gear, but overall not bad for a first takeoff in nearly 2 months.
Gear up.
And this is setting climb power. It's 28 inches manifold pressure and 2,000 RPM. When this airplane is trimmed nicely, it's nearly hands-free, which is pretty cool. At this point, although slightly low, the temperature still seemed okay. I chalked it up to being the first takeoff of the day. And now I'm powering back to 20 inches manifold pressure and 1750 RPM for leveling off on downwind, and then dropping the gear. And here's another clip from that first lesson about how we confirm the gear is down.
Okay, I see that pin. I see that pin.
This is a really important visual cue, right, from the cockpit.
If that is not showing when your gear is down, it is not down and locked.
I look out the window to see the locking pins, and then in the cockpit, I watch for the fingers and lights.
Fingers, pins, and lights. Gear is down.
I got extended on downwind due to traffic, so I trimmed this to the base leg.
Victor Juliet Tower, traffic exit at the end. Wind 220 at 6. Cleared stop and go runway 25.
Clear stop and go 25, Victor Juliet.
Okay. Gear is down. I've got fingers, pins, and lights. Guns check. Gas is good. Undercarriage is down. Mixture is rich. Prop is full. Fine. Switches are where I want them. I'm secure, and I'm clear to land. Crosswind is not too bad.
I definitely ended up dragging this one in a bit.
Down sooner than expected, but anyways.
For a stop and go, I come to a full stop and then add a little bit of power so there's some hydraulic pressure available. And then I usually verbalize flaps identified and coming up. And then verbally run through the pre-takeoff checks to confirm mixture rich, prop full fine, mags on both. And then call the engine instruments checked before committing to the roll. I did all that but was silent. So that's a debrief item for myself that in the future I always want to verbalize this even when solo, and I usually do.
My first landing in 49 days, so I'll take it. But next one, let's go for a 3-pointer. And I did check my instruments when I set the power.
So that was me telling myself that I had in fact checked the engine instruments, but at best it's only a glance in this airplane. So my real question to myself and everyone else is, how closely do you really look, and do you know what you're looking for when you look at the engine temperature and pressure? So this is the second climb out, and the temp is still about the same as it was for the first one. And now we're leveling off on downwind for the second one.
I got fingers, pins, and lights. Gear is down.
And Windsor Tower, Victor and Juliet is on the left, downwind runway 25, looking for a stop and go.
Victor and Juliet Tower, number 1.
Number 1, Victor and Juliet.
I'm going to switch tanks on the next one. Still okay.
The fuel gauges are on the floor in this thing. And the flap lever is also down there, sort of out of sight. It has 3 positions: up, locked, and down. So to get the desired setting, you need to place it in the up or the down position, watch the finger get to where you want it, and then place it back into the lock position, which is in the middle.
Gas undercarriage mixture, prop.
Keep an eye on the flap indicator finger. I watched it get to 20 and then tried to set it to lock without looking at the finger, but I actually went past the lock and back into up, thus accidentally retracting the flaps that I had just set.
Victor and Juliet Tower, traffic ahead on the roll, cleared stop and go runway 25.
Clear stop and go 25, Victor and Juliet with traffic.
Gear is still down. Prop is full fine. I'm secure, switches where I want them. Guns check is complete. We'll switch tanks on the next one. Light left crosswind is not too bad.
I have to confess to missing the temperature get down below the red here. I was kind of distracted because the plane was feeling weird as I slowed to approach speed with no flaps out.
Oh, I put the flaps up again. Cannot be making that mistake.
But at least I caught that error.
Okay, flaps are locked and deployed.
Tower, Jazz 866, we're still waiting on the back end. We could line up and wait for 30.
Jazz 866, Windsor Tower at Delta, line up runway 30 and wait. There is traffic doing a stop and go runway 25.
Line up and wait for Jazz 866 at 30. We have the steerman in sight, Jazz 866.
So again, for the stop and go process, it's really important to verbalize flaps identified coming up and the pre-takeoff checks. It set a character for me not to be verbalizing. I think this was the beginning of me realizing there was a problem. I kind of knew I shouldn't be taking off for the third time.
Jazz 866 Tower, still waiting?
Affirmative, sir. Still waiting on the back end. 866.
Jazz 866 Tower, Roger. Give me number 2 for departure. I'm going to be departing a Chipmunk, runway 25 circuit.
Okay, check that, Jazz 866.
Charlie Yankee Romeo, Windsor Tower at India, line up runway 25, number 1.
I was late reducing to climb power here. I'm sort of fixated on racking my brain to try to understand why the temp is so low. This runway is 9,000 feet long, so for the sake of the neighbors, we usually reduce to climb power as we fly over the departure end. I finally snap out of it and reduce to climb power, climbing through 500 feet. At this point, I started to realize I definitely had a problem. The temperature was lower than it had been on the first one, and that made no sense.
Sir, 25, no gas, then switch tank.
Thank you.
Back to left. Fuel pressure is still good. Mixture is rich. Probably go fine in a minute. Mixture, so gas, undercarriage, mixture. Prop will find shortly.
This was a flustered gumps check. I'm fixating on the tri-gauge. I'm doubting myself about what I'm seeing for an oil pressure reading. Basically, this flight is no longer feeling routine by this point. But at least I deploy and lock the flaps with confidence.
Alright, flaps are at 20. I did not raise them this time by accident. Prop is full fine. Gear is down. Low in traffic should not be a problem. Speed is
Victor Juliet Tower, caution pulse away turbulence on the departure from Dash 8 departing runway 30. Wind 200 at 8, cleared stop and go runway 25.
Clear stop and go 25. Check your remarks about the wake, Victor and Juliet.
And to continue the flustered chain of events, this landing was crap. If that landing hadn't sucked, I'd probably have ended the flight right there, but I like to end on a good note. I wasn't confident that I was properly diagnosing the oil temperature problem. It really didn't make any sense. I started to doubt myself that maybe I was just all in my head about it, and I decided it must have been nothing, or at least not enough to cancel a flight, so I continued with the next one.
Contact Tower,
Charlie India, Charlie Mike Tango.
coming up. Full fine, Rich, both. Strapped in, here we go.
But no doubt there was some get-there-itis as far as I wanted to get a couple good landings in before calling it a day here.
Charlie Yankee Romeo Tower, wind 210 at 6, cleared stop and go runway 25. Correction, touch and go runway 25.
So I checked the engine instruments as I raised the gear, and honestly I was shocked by what I saw. The temp is now at or below the red, at takeoff power, and that's absolutely not right. Now I'm regretting taking off, and for a second I considered aborting, but after a stop and go I wasn't sure I had enough available runway remaining, and the gear was already up, so that was that. I'm still mostly on board, and I start to reduce climb power at the correct time, but I pause after reducing the manifold pressure and don't get to the prop. Until now. I'm very aware that I'm fixating at this point, and I'm absolutely going to make the next landing the last one. At least I'm learning from the flaps mistake and doing better with my gumps checks.
Pass, undercarriage, mixture, prop. Flaps deployed and locked and still down.
I remember at this point even questioning if the engine sounded right. This is a classic moment of just wanting to be on the ground ASAP. After I get the landing flaps deployed, my thumb hovers over the transmit button because I want to ask the tower for a full stop landing.
Victor Juliet Tower, wind 240 at 10 gust 15, cleared stop and go runway 25.
Okay, cleared 25, and I'm actually looking for a full stop on this one.
Victor and Juliet Tower, clear to land, runway 25, plan to exit Foxtrot.
Victor and Juliet, clear to land.
Landed early every time, but anyways.
I wasn't happy with any of my landings today, and at this point I remembered I was instructed to exit at Foxtrot. I'm probably about here at this point, and if I was on top of my game I would have planned to land a little longer. You can hear me adding power so I can taxi a bit quicker. So the debrief and the resolution is coming up in a second, but thanks for sticking it out if you made it this far. Please in the comments add any thoughts about flights you've had like this. It's really awesome to learn by debriefing, even on a routine flight that doesn't go as planned. The problem turned out to be an issue with the vernotherm, which is a thermostat controlling the oil that's sent through the oil cooler. It had failed, causing too much oil to be sent through, which resulted in the temperature being lower than the expected norm of 70 degrees Celsius. And this is why it's important to know where your instruments typically read, because even a subtle difference can mean something is really wrong. Yeah, so on the last one I watched it more carefully on final, and when I pulled the power back it did go below the red. I'm like, it's been running in circuits and it's a hot day, why would it not be warmer? Pressure was low but not low. Anyway, you would think with low temperature you would get high pressure if it had too much oil, right?
Yeah.
And if it was not enough oil it'd be high temperature and low pressure. Anyway, it flew great, so my flying is fine. Once I had that distraction though, I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna call it after this one. I think I did 4, and the wind was picking up by the last one, so I think I timed it right. If you're still watching, thanks for being an engaged part of the community. And if you enjoyed this, consider signing up for Patreon to see more raw stuff. That campaign is a huge part of how I'm able to produce this content. It's actually pretty crazy to think of how far this thing has come. Remember this one? Flying a Super Cub at dusk on a grass strip? It doesn't feel like it was that long ago. And it represents a huge step in starting to get comfortable flying tail wheel, which really does help improve all the fundamentals in every aspect of flying. Anyway, until next time, keep your flight chops sharp.
Yep, getting it done. Good boy.